All right, so we will do that. And so welcome. I'm glad that you all took advantage of this, and I'm going to be adding people in as you go. This is sort of a drop-in. So what that means is that people are not going to show up necessarily on time. Is there anybody that has a time constraint of like, I've only got 10 more minutes before I go to my next patient?
I'm not sure who's showing up these days, so.
Okay, good.
Well, I may have to leave at 4, but.
Okay. So I guess I want to get a sense of what people's comfort level is first and foremost with internet technology. I mean, I know some people here that have been doing podcasts and Zoom stuff. And then there are some people that I'm not familiar with you enough to know your practice. So I think the best way with this sort of format to actually assess that is for people to maybe give me some questions, and I'm going to type them down so that I keep track of them. But don't be shy. And I know social workers were used to kind of having a little bit of structure, but what I'm going to suggest works for this sort of situation is if people want to just say, this is John or this is Jonathan, and tell me what their question is, you're going to bump into each other a little bit, but I think we should just try to be okay with that. So what are some questions about getting set up with telehealth that you all may have?
This is John, and I'm, or Jack, and I'm not on the video, and I don't know why. So that's my level of competence with this.
Okay. All right. And so let's start with you, Jack. You're using a desktop or an iPad or an iPhone? Or
it's a laptop.
A laptop.
Yeah.
All right. So if you go, is it a Mac or is it a PC?
It's a PC.
Okay. So if you go to your screen if you go to the bottom of the screen where you see us, can you see all of us?
Yes.
Okay. There should be something there that looks like a little video camera.
Yeah.
And it should say, and does it say stop video?
I can't really read it, but let me see. It's 2. Okay.
There you go.
Oh,
Okay.
fuzzy.
Hey, Cindy.
Hey.
So
How are you?
wait, so can you see it, Jack, now?
Yeah.
'Cause I can't.
You can see me? Hey.
No.
I can't see you.
No,
No, I can't see you.
But you know what, Jack? What I can do is I can request that you open start your video. So did you get something that said start your video?
Yeah.
Okay. So pay attention to what you're about to do.
It says I'm going to hit that.
There you go.
There you go.
Hi, Jack. So now you can see us
Hi.
and you.
But now I lost everybody else. So. Oh wait, there you are. Okay, you can see me now. Great.
Yep. So
Okay.
now I think the first and most important thing, if you're doing groups while we're talking about this, if you're doing groups, and I'm going to share my screen here. So I'm sorry, forgive that nightmare for a minute. Let's see waiting room, stop share. All right, I'm going to admit everybody. All right, so let's see if I can do this better than that. Yeah, so there we go. Let's try this again. All right, so it's not going to let me do it the way I want it to. So I guess what I would say is for those of you who are really new to this but are doing groups, if you go to the upper right-hand corner, you should see something that either says speaker view or gallery view. And this is a really kind of useful trick for you if you're doing groups. If it's a speaker view, you're going to have whoever is speaking is going to be the only person on the screen or the main person on the screen, and you may see a few smaller other people. The gallery view, on the other hand, is going to show all of us kind of like the Brady Bunch, and you'll know who's speaking by the outline. So this is actually useful for different people. So, so I have a very hard time if I'm working with several people at once and they're kind of fidgety, doing the sort of gallery view. If you're mostly doing one-on-one, I think the best view for you is the speaker view. Also, you'll be happy to note that there are ways for you to minimize yourself, so that you don't have to kind of look at yourself very much. Also, be you're doing anything else, like if you're doing play therapy and doing video games or something with a kid, or you want to be doing something else, if you hit the minimize on your window, you should see it go up to the corner, and that will help you kind of look at other things. All right, so let's see. Okay, so hi, welcome people that are new. Right now, I'm Mike. I'm the person that's doing this. It is a very informal drop-in where we're going to be asking you questions. Believe it or not, the fact that you're on here and just engaging and learning to sort of talk and listen is getting you more familiar. And so part of what this is systematic desensitization for those of you who are phobic. If you have a question for me, I'm going to jot them down and we're going to answer them as best we can. There's no basic level of aptitude. We just helped somebody figure out how to turn on their camera. So, again, we're doing all this for fun and for free. So, it's going to be a little casual. So who's got the next question?
I have a question.
Okay,
so if you're working with a client, and do they have to have, let's say they're doing it from their phone, do they need to have the app?
Yes. So the thing about Zoom that is useful to know is that they all of their products are downloaded at the same download page. So the link that I gave you in the email, you should be able to see Zoom for PC, Zoom for Apple, Apple, Zoom for iPad, Zoom for anything. Now, so what you want to do is you want to have an email that you have sort of cut and pastable that you can email to patients before you get ready for your first appointment. And you really want to do two things with it. You want to, if it's somebody that's really new and is as terrified and unfamiliar, if not more so than you want to make sure that you have your phone available, your office phone, so you can talk them through. It is really common for me when I'm getting people set up to have the first 5 to 10 minutes being a phone call, and it can be a little frustrating. And really, some of this depends on your patient's capacity to self-regulate. But what I've experienced is I've never had a patient that absolutely couldn't get online. It took a little while. And one of the things that actually I've often talked about with people is that doing this shows a couple things that we know in therapy already. One of which is, although we're wired for connection can be really hard and complicated, and people have the power to be persistent and resilient. And usually, the fact of just getting the camera on, I don't know, Jack, if you can attest to this, did you feel a sense of competency when we got the camera working?
Yeah.
Yeah, ride that neurochemical wave. That's a good thing. And so you'll probably anticipate that with your patients as well. So Cindy, to answer your question, the apps are all downloadable. You really want to make sure people get an email at least a half an hour, if not the day before, so they have time to sort of play with it. You're the one that has to pay for it. They get to use it free. So they don't have to pay for anything. The other thing that you probably want to do that I can't do easily with you here is you want to download the Zoom app yourself. because you want to take a little time to experiment with a friend or a partner, because the settings are a little different. How you flip things around, how you adjust things are a little different. So
On the phone, you're talking about on the phone.
on the phone or
Yeah.
on the iPad. The iPad and the phone are very similar,
Yeah.
but and most of the features overlap. But there's going to be what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to anticipate what they might be seeing on the phone, because you can't really ask them to share their screen very easily when they're using the phone. So
Okay. So
keep them coming. Next question.
What are some platforms that other people are using for telehealth? Is it only Zoom, and are you using HIPAA-friendly Zoom?
I am using HIPAA-friendly Zoom. There is a lot of confusion that I'm attempting actually to clear up a little bit. I actually on Twitter kind of pinged the CEO of Zoom, because there is this piece about HIPAA compliance and that it's $200 a month. Yeah, I am not sure that's entirely true, because I've been using HIPAA compliant Zoom. The product, when I got it, I called and got the sort of customization moment with them. There is a business associate agreement. I have the level of encryption that's HIPAA compliant, per the person I talked to, but I am not paying $200 a month. So what I'm concerned about is that the marketing for this may have been targeted at hospitals or larger settings, and that people are thinking, oh, Zoom is $200 a month, that's too expensive, when in fact, that's not the only option if you're a solo practitioner. So I tweeted out to the CEO, and I'm hoping, because he seems pretty responsive to Twitter, that he's going to somehow clarify for me. And I also said, because I'm a social worker and have no shame about these things, how about something free like the kids in K through 12 are getting? So, stay tuned on that. There are other ones that are HIPAA compliant. Doxy.me is HIPAA compliant. I was using GoToMeeting for a while and Adobe Connect for a while. But what happened is a lot of these folks got really expensive and concerned with scalability really quickly. And so what I ended up doing was I went with Zoom because it wasn't $200 a month. It was something that was pretty easy for me to figure out. It has a robust platform in terms of features. It's got what I really care about, which is sort of a critical mass of users, which means you're going to get better tech support. So I'm not at all going to say Doxy.me is not good, because I don't know it. What I am going to say is that if you want to know about more technical tips, Zoom is going to be where I can help you most. If you're looking for technical clinical tips, like, how do I help the patient feel attached while we're doing sessions, that stuff I can talk to you about. But in terms of the technology, I tend to stick with one product, just because it's impossible to kind of tell you what all the bells and buttons and whistles are for too many.
Could I ask a question on the back of that?
Sure,
Hi. Two questions. One, this is a comment to Adria, who's asking about the platforms. I use VC, capital V, capital S, double E, which seems to be safe enough. They can sign business agreements and be HIPAA compliant, I understand. It's a very simple thing to use, a bit like Skype. Both of you need to download a bit of software, but it's a very good one. But my question for you was, you mentioned GoToMeeting there, and I've used GoToMeeting once or twice, and I use it for business purposes outside of therapy. Is it sufficiently secure for therapy purposes?
GoToMeeting?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
My experience of GoToMeeting was that it was HIPAA compliant, that it had the level of encryption. But let me talk about encryption for a minute. And then, James, I saw that you raised your hand. James is a former student and is being a really good student by raising his hand. The culture we're establishing, James, is people can just ask a question, but I'll go to you next. So in terms of HIPAA compliance, there's some basic things you need to be careful about. You can have the best level of encryption on GoToMeeting or on Zoom, but if you're using a wireless connection, you have to a certain extent compromised that. Now, I don't have a huge problem with that because quite honestly, our voicemail and when we're doing voicemail over wireless connections is already has a little bit of compromise. But what I'm more concerned with is not just the privacy, but the lag. So I guess the first thing is I want to tell you, no matter what program you use, make sure that your computer, whether it's a laptop or desktop, can get plugged into an Ethernet cable if at all possible. Because if you've got 40 megabytes per second, and that's what it's advertised. That's what it's advertised if you have it wired. You want to put that about to a third to a quarter of that if you are using wireless. So part of that is privacy, and part of that is to make sure there's less lag. This is going to be even more important now. I know Comcast has said they're not throttling your broadband anymore as a result of COVID-19, but you still might notice that there's a lot more traffic now that we've got more than a third of the nation doing online learning. So wireless is one piece in terms of privacy. There was something else I wanted to tell you. In the two basic things that you want to ask whatever internet video conferencing platform, the two questions you want to ask are, what is your level of encryption? And you should be able to find out whether it's the industry standard level of encryption for HIPAA. But more importantly, are they willing to sign a business associate agreement? Now, some of you may already know this, but some of you don't. And the important thing about a business associate agreement is it's the video conference provider's way of saying, hey, yeah, we believe in this product so much and we stand by it so much that we are willing to share liability with you. So, we think Zoom is so encrypted that yes, if anyone gets sued, we'll be sued too. That is what the government is asking for the level of standard for companies providing video conferencing software. The level of encryption and the business associate agreement. So that is in general, if you're shopping around, there's probably now 150 to 250 video conferencing products. Those are the two main things that you would want to know about in terms of your clinical privacy. I really think you should go with somebody that's really a big brand. And the reason is the bigger brands have the deeper pockets and can provide more robust support for customer service. And that's really important when things go wrong a little bit. James?
So is Zoom, is Zoom, did we sign a business associate agreement with Zoom?
When you signed up for the HIPAA compliant version of it, you should have.
Okay. Just wondering.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can request a copy of that, and they will either direct you to the link that you can include on your site. I don't go that crazy about it, but they will give you a copy of it. Adobe Connect used to give you something you could download. All right. James, are you still there? Got a question?
I am, Mike, and thank you for doing this drop-in. I'm joined by my CEO, and I'm the clinical director, and she's the CEO of an addiction treatment outpatient clinic in Watertown.
I know Right Turn. You guys do good stuff.
Thank you. And we're working with the Executive Office of Health and Human Services and Mary Lou Sutter's office to bring our entire outpatient group clinic online.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question are, one, what do we need to do in terms of the level of encryption and the business associate agreement? Like, how do we actually get that set up? And two, just to see if anybody else has any insurance experience with regards to telehealth and this sort of setup.
Okay, so that's a really interesting question, and people can jump in for this after I answer my bit of the second one. So the first part is you've got, the good news is as an agency you have a budget, and you may not totally agree with this, but a little bit deeper pockets than perhaps the average clinician. So how many clinicians are you looking to get online with?
It would be probably 2 or 3.
Okay, that's great. So you would basically what you do is I would say go to Zoom, and Zoom has when you go to plans, there's one that says healthcare, and then I would click on that one, and that's the one that's billed as the infamous 200 a month plan. 200 a month is not bad for an agency for online. So I think that would be one thing. You would want to, the good news, and this is good news for everyone in Massachusetts and possibly good news in other states, but the good news is our governor just signed an interim telehealth bill, which allows you to be doing telehealth and is requiring Massachusetts insurance providers to pay for it, services just like they would in person. On a federal level, the good news is the Center for Medicaid Services has basically put in an interim adjustment to how they do healthcare, telehealth. And what they're saying is that if you have worked with this patient in the past 3 years, or someone at your agency that has a similar tax ID number has worked with this patient in person, they'll cover telehealth. Now that is tricky because it's not going to be good for you to be doing things across state lines, but it is indicating a trend. And I think what you're going to see in the next couple months is people always follow Massachusetts. I'm sorry to brag, but they always follow Massachusetts inevitably in terms of what we do for healthcare. So can I send the link to that decision? Jonathan, you're going to drive me crazy. Yes, I will try. I will do that in a second. So what I would say for everyone is the trend is that it's going to be easier through Medicare, especially, to get reimbursement, and Medicaid is hopefully going to follow suit. So that is the first question. In terms of malpractice insurance, I think what's interesting is I know that the two big ones, right, at least around my neck of the woods, have been American Professional Agency, which is what a lot of people have used for solo practices, and the NASW insurance. At one point, the NASW insurance was billing that they cover telehealth. And I think that APA has followed suit. Here's where I think you need to be careful. All telehealth is not created equal. As many of you know, if you do telehealth within state lines, you are in compliance with all of your state regulations. The minute you or a patient goes to another state, depending on the state, you or the patient may not be kind of making it possible. So for example, if I'm seeing someone in Massachusetts that's a kid that's in college and he goes to Connecticut, Connecticut may say that he needs to have a therapist licensed in Connecticut. Connecticut may say he needs to see a therapist licensed in Connecticut. Massachusetts may say, I can't see him outside of Massachusetts. It depends on, you've got suddenly two sets of laws. So regardless of what the federal government says about telehealth and things being reimbursed, it really applies to what your state professional legislature is saying. So you always want, if you have clients that are in the same state as you are, or are usually in the same state but go out of state for maybe a vacation week or not, that is not a big deal. The places that the regs are a bigger deal now, at least in terms of the ones I just saw, are two ways. One is, again, you can't go across state lines. You have to be familiar with the regulations for each state. And that means being familiar with up to 50 states. And some states don't have regulations. The other piece that you need to be aware of, oh, it just went out of my head. Is that your liability is only covered for doing appropriate telehealth. And what your liability would always say is you need to be in confirmation with your state and local regulations.
So let me ask a question based off of that, because this is one of the ones I wanted to ask. Is there best practice-wise any kind of hard and fast time limit? Because, like, for example, you said if somebody's out of the state for a week for vacation, probably no big deal. I'm guessing college kids going home for summer vacation, probably much closer to a big deal. Is there any guidance on this at all yet, or is it kind of just?
So let me you know what, if you really want to get into the weeds, there is a telehealth law site that has the up-to-date, as best as they have, the up-to-date policies per state. And it is put out by the Center for Connected Health Policy, and I'm putting it in your chat. So what that means is you probably see a little something lighting up in your chat. That would be the link. Make sure you click all these links before before the meeting ends, because they will probably disappear. So that is the place that I would go to, so the more up-to-date versions of these things. Again, a lot of this stuff is being done based on case law, and quite honestly, nobody I know is coming after an individual clinician to date for practicing in Rhode Island with a patient in Connecticut. If you are really wanting to be prudent, what I would say is you want to write a letter to whatever division of professional licensure in the state that you're planning on seeing someone longer term. And by longer term, I mean more than maybe a month. That would be sort of, I guess, what I would say is prudent. And I would basically say I'm asking for permission to temporarily continue my work across state lines. And then no one is ever going to respond to it, but at least you ask the question. I have a patient that I started seeing in New York, and as a result, I went through the licensure process. So if you think you're going to perhaps do work with more than one or two patients, it's worth going through the licensure process, but it's expensive. If you think about what it costs to get licensed and you multiply it by 40 times, you want to pick your states. So I'm getting some questions in terms of, would my liability cover me across state lines? The answer to that is sort of what I just said, which is no. Your liability is not going to cover you if you're not in compliance with the local laws in the area you're practicing. If you are working with someone ongoing in Connecticut, and Connecticut has a set of laws that says, hey, patients in Connecticut need a licensed therapist, then you are at risk of your malpractice insurance being violated because of that. So that's one piece. There was another piece I wanted to mention, and I just forgot. Can I explain how to arrange a meeting for a group? I can explain how to arrange a meeting for a group. And this is really actually pretty important, because what you need to do is you need to make sure that each individual gets an individual invitation. People can say blind copy, but I actually think it's really important that you go even further than that, because there are ways that you can see the blind copy of everybody if you've got the right know-how and the right platform for it. So what I would basically do is I would get like for Zoom, the professional product that I've got allows up to 100 people. So hopefully none of you are doing a group of 100 people. God help you if you are. So what you would basically do is you'd want to set up the group, and you'd set it up as a recurring meeting, and then you could have it set up so that each member would only have to register once, and then you could send out the invitations to individual members. And then from the first point on, they can come in after they've registered.
What do you mean register? How do they register?
So when you set up a meeting, when I set up a meeting, I have a little place that I can put the time, and I set 3:30. I put in that it's recurring every Thursday. In this case, every Monday at 3:30. Then there's a place which is, do you require people to register? Now, for non-clinical groups, you don't have to require people to register. So say you're setting up a local 12-step group. Then maybe you don't want to have it set up that they have to register. Or maybe you are going to be doing a closed group of 6 guys, or a closed women's group, or a closed adolescent group. And what you may want to do is just have them all register once. So there's a little box you check, which is that registrants just have to do this once, and then they're ready.
When you invite them to the group, can you do one email and have everybody's name on that?
No.
So you have to invite each one separately.
Well, you basically have one text, right? But you'd need to do it separately. And I know that's a little labor intensive, but think of it this way, you probably don't have a group that's bigger than maybe 8 people.
Right.
So, but you do need to make sure that each of them gets their own individual email, because anytime that they have a copy or a CC, it's a violation of their medical privacy. And I would just say it's best practice. It's just good to get in the habit of keeping things individual. I would love to send out mass bills. I'd love to send out mass invitations, but this is one place where I think it needs to stay clunky. Okay.
Mike, I have a question.
Yep, who's this?
This is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. On the Zoom, we're invited because you have a subscription to the Zoom, correct?
Yep.
So if we want to invite, say, just one client, we would have to subscribe to Zoom and then invite the patient to join us.
Unless you're, and I guess maybe James left, but unless you're an agency where you want to set something up so that there you are, so that, James's situation is he's in an agency where they're probably going to have several clinicians. And in that case, they would want to use things like rooms and stuff like that. For you, if you just have one patient, then you probably would want to talk to the folks. And again, I'm saying Zoom. I don't have stock in Zoom, by the way. I am not getting kickbacks from Zoom. But what I would do is I would contact them and say, this is my specific setup. I'm a solo practice. I anticipate having 1 to 5 patients. I need something that's HIPAA compliant. I really think they're going to scale down the $200 for you. I think that's really a problem in their marketing, because I'm not paying that.
My challenge is that I work specifically with older adults, and very few of them are, have any interest in a computer or a smartphone.
Right, but they have a lot less interest in getting sick and dying right now, right? So sometimes we get the carrot that makes us learn, and sometimes we get the stick. And I think that for older folks that are sort of tech resistant, I would really lean on the phone a little bit. And this brings me back to a point about the phone that I have to remember. But I would say our first appointment on Zoom, we're going to be doing it both on Zoom and with the phone. That I'm going to be with you on the phone, helping you get set up on Zoom, because for a lot of older folks are very familiar with the phone and they have no problem using that. And it may be that you just need to talk them through. While I'm telling you this, telehealth is a little misleading. The newest regulations that I saw that were approved this week, the mass telehealth thing that Congress did, specifically says that for telehealth to be reimbursed, it needs to be video conferencing, to the point where they say you can use a telephone, but you need to be using video conferencing. So you can, we can do anything, but in terms of legally, in terms of what's being asked, you need to be able to see the person and be using the video conferencing software. You can't just use the phone and call it telehealth. All right, so hold on a sec, people that are talking, because I'm getting several questions in chat, and you can't see that. All right. Oh, you can see some of them. So Deborah Abrams, are you there, Deborah? Hi, Deborah. And I got your message. Yes, I do that sort of thing exactly, and I'm happy to talk with you about it later. So Governor Baker's new statement today, it seems like he said something regarding in-network providers authorizing telehealth. I'm wondering if you might know anything regarding telehealth phone only for out-of-network providers. Okay, I answered the first part of that question. So out-of-network providers actually have it easier. Because here's the deal, when you're an out-of-network provider, you don't have a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you don't have to add all these crazy modifiers. You can if you want to, but what you need to tell them is that you did an hour of psychotherapy, okay? When you do a super bill as an out-of-network provider, you basically need to say who the person is, what the diagnosis is, and then say, you know, psychotherapy. You don't have to tell them where you did the thing. You have to tell them what you did. So out-of-network providers actually have it a little bit easier. You submit a super bill after your patients have paid you, and then they kind of just reimburse the patient. The second question Deborah had is filling out claim forms for telehealth regarding coding and modifiers. So I'm living the dream. Basically, I'm out of network with everybody, which means I do all my billing now by PayPal. And then my patients get a bill, a super bill when they request it. So they do all that work. I know that this may seem a little draconian, but now may be a good time for you, if you're feeling like it's time for a change, for you to say, you know, as we're switching over to do a few things, I'm going to need to have you do the burden of submitting to your own insurance for reimbursement. That I'm going to be learning this new technology because I want to keep doing stuff, but I'm only human and I'm not a billing agency, and that was a courtesy I provided for you, and I'm not going to be able to do that. Now, if you are a managed care provider, you can't do that because you signed a contract that said that you would have to do certain things. But for those of you who are not a managed care provider, or for those of you who have a product that you're not in network with, you have a lot more freedom than you may have been taking advantage of. So those are those questions. Let me take another one from Steven. How do I tell the difference between the HIPAA compliant and the version of Zoom and the non-HIPAA compliant? You know what? It's not obvious. I think what it is, I think what the best thing to do is to really call, and I know you all hate that sort of talk to customer service, but I think you want to click on the telehealth and you want to click on getting a quote and talk to somebody, because I think it's also going to be a little bit cheaper than $200. And then you basically, you will ask for your level of encryption, ask for your business associate agreement. But let me tell you what my past experience and my hunch is. My past experience has been that the level of encryption is the same, or pretty much the same, for all of the products, that some of this is branding. And my hunch is that that's still the same. My hunch is that if you used a form of Zoom that was plugged into a wire, that it had the same level of encryption for the minimum requirements of HIPAA. Now, I could be wrong, and that's where you want to basically, you know, talk to someone at Zoom. HIPAA was historically, and high-tech was historically, very vague about this sort of stuff. They didn't tell you you need 64K level encryption or anything like that. That's something that I think is much more on the industry side than the government side. So what I would suggest to you is that you actually speak to a human being there and say, it needs to be HIPAA compliant, and I have a very small practice. And you will probably find something that's a little bit less onerous than the 200. All right, next question or comments. Okay, that's a comment. Okay, can we talk about reimbursement for the insurance companies? When you submit a claim, what is the location for telehealth? Okay, so that's a really good question, and I do not have that because, as I said, I do not submit claims. Where you can find that is at cms.gov. So if you go to cms.gov and you look for location code modifiers, you can find it there. Again, this is only if you are in network, in a managed care network, and you are contractually obligated to do that. If you're out of network, you really don't have to do that. You just have to submit that you paid for, and you just have to submit to the patient, have the patient pay you, and then the patient gets a super bill from you. I have had no patients that have come back to me with problems with my super bill, and it doesn't have any modifier. Okay.
Mike,
Yep.
just to follow up on that.
Yep.
When the patient is submitting then their claim to their insurance to try to get reimbursement,
Yep.
do they, on their claim, do they say it's telehealth? Does anyone know? Do they have to?
They don't have to. No, they don't have to. So patients pay me daily or weekly for my appointments. And then once a month or every couple of months, they say, I'd like to submit for my reimbursement with my insurance company. I generate a super bill for them. The super bill has the patient's name, patient's diagnosis, the number of dates of service. It doesn't have modifier codes. And that has not been a problem at all for me. Now, the clinical piece of this that's important is I think we always should try to be as transparent with our DSM-4 and DSM-5 coding. But some of us tend to avoid telling people that have borderline personality disorder that they have borderline personality disorder. And so suddenly when you're doing super bills, you have this awkward moment where they will ask you, what's this diagnosis? And you have to say. Now, this diagnosis can be, that moment can really be a learning opportunity where you can sort of destigmatize and learn how to sort of language their diagnosis in a way that's not narcissistically injurious. You can also do what I do, which is I code very lightly. I code adjustment disorder with mixed disturbance of emotion and features a lot, because I don't think I trust insurance companies to be careful with the information I give them around diagnosis, and it actually can come back to haunt a patient in terms of life insurance or long-term disability insurance. So my two pieces of advice there are code lightly and be ready to tell the patient why you said they had narcissistic personality disorder if you're going to submit that way. All right, so did someone else, next question, I've caught up with the text ones. People can now blurt out again.
Oh, I just wrote one.
Oh, you just wrote one. Okay, let's see. Oh, Mike, you mentioned you would discuss clinical skill with telehealth, specifically how to help client. Yes. Okay. So the most important thing and the hardest thing for therapists to get used to is that when I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at you. Okay. So right now I'm looking at Jonathan on the screen, but Jonathan, and Jonathan sees me looking at him. I'm not actually looking at him now. Now, if I'm looking at all of you, you can see me making eye contact because I'm looking at the camera. This is a really important piece of attachment because with the current level of technology, eye contact and facial recognition for both of us gets split up a little bit. Like when I want to track what your affect is on your face, I have to break contact. All right. So right now I can tell that Catherine is listening intently and she's grinning a little bit because I just kind of pointed her out. So I'm imagining you're feeling recognized and seen, but you are not necessarily feeling recognized and seen by me because I'm not looking at you, right? Boom. Now you can see that I'm looking at you. So you have to get in the practice of, in some ways, for those of you that have object relations theory background, you have to start to imagine the camera as the object when you want to look at attachment, okay? And you'll have to remind yourself because sometimes you'll be looking at the patient and they'll clearly be having emotional distress. And you'll know in that moment that what you need is not to track their affect. You know they're distraught. What they then need is for you to shift from tracking them to looking at the camera. Okay, so when you notice moments of deep affect, the clinical skill you're going to need to sort of practice is actually a parallel process of what we're all going through now with COVID-19, which is you're going to need to remind yourself, I need to detach from my attachment with them and look at the camera so they feel seen. Okay, it's sort of like that social distancing. When you see someone crying or someone upset, the urge is to give them a hug, right? And you're going to need to use your clinical ability to be able to hold on to, oh, in the bigger picture, I can't give them a hug. How do I connect with them with words? So that in a nutshell is one of I think the most important things. The other thing, Adria, is you're going to have so many opportunities to model empathic failure and misattunement when you're doing therapy online with patients as you both kind of ramp up. And I know I've told some of my classes this and workshops this, so they might remember this story. But I had a setup initially where I had a camera on my monitor, and then I had a laptop next door, and I was using the big monitor plugged into the laptop. And so at one point, for some reason, the cameras switched, and I disappeared because they then saw the laptop camera and I was over here. So at first, my patients just thought I vanished. They could still hear me, but they were kind of confused. As I was trying to fix it, I actually hit this avatar program that this particular camera had, which replaced me on the screen with a kitten. So they went from seeing me to me disappearing to suddenly a kitten with lip syncing Mike coming out. And at the time, they were kind of looking at it, and we chuckled. And I said, you'll have to excuse me. No one in graduate school ever taught me what I was supposed to do if I turned into a kitten in front of a patient. Try to approach this with that same kind of level of humor and help them anticipate that there will be moments where they feel a little bit of a breaking connection. But you know what? Be prepared for the fact that your relationship may actually transcend the corporeal one you're used to. That patients may actually feel very held and connected to you, even if you are mediated by a screen. Anybody that hasn't asked a question yet that would like to?
Mike, I don't have a question, but a couple of people have asked about the backgrounds.
Yes.
On my video, so I just posted something in the comments about the background.
Yes.
Yeah.
So backgrounds, the way you would deal with backgrounds is if you go down to the stop video, there's a little arrow, and if you hit the arrow, you'll get video settings, and then you go down to virtual background, and then you can choose a virtual background, or you can add an image, such as the one that I add. Last night I was feeling a little punchy with the group I was hanging out with. It's not this one's very good actually for adolescents. But you can do this if you want to, or you can do something more subdued. I would be careful about these backgrounds if you are doing a lot of work with anybody that has a thought disorder or has a history of psychosis. Those things can actually be really kind of troublesome for them. And so that's one thing. If you're working with a lot of adolescents though, they can think it's really cool and you can really enjoy it. Be prepared, by the way, if you're doing any adolescent groups, for them to be kind of doing all sorts of funny things with their face, crowns, little horns, that annoying puppy dog nose, whatever. But so, and I guess going back to clinical and what Adria said, be prepared for people to find new ways to tweak your countertransference. People are going to find new ways to, irritate you or challenge you. People may not kind of do, are we done yet? They may start kind of taking their screen off, or they might do all sorts of other stuff. All right, James, thanks for stopping by. It was so nice to see you. Hang in there.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
I have to take off too. Thanks so much, y'all.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. This is amazing.
No problem. Nice to see you, Jonathan, in your virtual office. It looks sweet.
Yeah, thank you. I spent a lot of money on the furniture, so I appreciate that.
Be well.
All right. Keep up the good work.
You
Bye.
too. All right. So we have a few more minutes before we stop. And again, I'm planning on offering this for the next foreseeable future. So I have it in my calendar that every Monday I'm going to do this. which is going to focus more on tech and clinical things. And then on the next 2 dates that you have probably listed, but they're not in my head at the moment, I'm going to do a COVID support, peer support for people, and an educator support for people. But this one is specifically for your technical questions, technical being clinical and technical being nuts and bolts. Yes?
I have another question. Sorry. I just gave
No, I'm glad you're making use of it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this so much. This is my first time doing telehealth using Zoom or any of these things. So I've spoken to people on the phone, but never
Right.
this way. So thank you. So if you are introducing this into your practice and you have like a client that you've been seeing, like I've scheduled clients for next week. I happen to have taken this week off. It was nice. It worked out coincidentally.
Yep.
So do I send like a link and then like I change my schedule all the time. I'm flexible. So every session I'm going to have to send a new link for. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so you'll get used to this. So I tend to be pretty rigid in that people have a regular time each week. What happens is 5 minutes before the appointment or right around the time of the appointment, I will send them an invitation. So what you do is when you go to Zoom, you'll see something that says start a meeting. And then what you'll see, if you see this screen, do you see in the lower left corner something that says invite?
I'm like in this chat. I gotta get out there, right?
So, yep. Yep, you'll see something that says invite.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, and then what'll happen is if you click it, it'll say choose your default email, or you can just copy the URL. And so whichever way is easiest, you basically copy that URL and you send it to the patient.
Perfect.
Okay, and you'll get the hang of it. Sometimes there will be some connection problems and you'll have to close out the meeting and then do the whole thing over again. You'll have to basically send them an invitation for every meeting you do. So if I'm going to meet with you, Adria, and for some reason the computer shuts down and I have to do it again, I can't just go back into the Zoom the way I do it. I have to start up a new meeting, send you a new invitation. That is actually less complicated than if you just had a room that people could come in and out. Because sometimes I've had on 1 or 2 occasions a patient there's Randy. So hold on a second. Hi, I hope we didn't keep you long, Randy.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. Good. So there's been one occasion where when I tried to use the room thing instead of sending individual meetings, that my 2:30 showed up before my 1:30 had left, and they kind of saw each other. There were two emerging adults, so they were kind of saw each other on the screen, and like one of them, the one that took the next appointment, was like, "Well, that was weird." So you really do want to just do a new invitation every time. So just get in the habit of Xing out of Zoom, going right back into it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Some of the things, I guess this is a general thing. Zoom is a wonderful platform and it's a robust platform. And what that means is it has more technology than you as a medical professional ought to be using. So just like blind copying and mass emails, that is a really useful technology that you ought not to be using. So this is another example of how you just want to be careful, and you know, sometimes it would be nice to use certain bells and whistles, but we can't use them. Let's see. Okay, Deborah has another question. Sometimes when I'm a member on a Zoom group as opposed to the host, it's 50% of the time, I'm told my mic doesn't work. All right, so what's interesting here is, Catherine, can you say something to me?
Hi, Mike. This is very valuable information you give me.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. So what's interesting to me is your microphone looks like it's muted, but yet you can speak, which must mean that you've got some sort of setting on your Zoom already to recognize voice and cancel things out. But normally, if I was to mute myself, I would mute myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Yep.
Yes.
Now I can, but before.
So sometimes when your patient starts or when you start talking, that may need to be tweaked. One of the things that is a little artificial that you have to get used to as a ritual in online sessions is basically when a patient logs in, I say, "Hi, can you hear me and see me?" And they say yes. Or occasionally, if they're a smartass, they say, "No, I can't." But they really can. So you always check for sound and visual. Now, if you're using, oh, and this is another good little tip. If you're using your phone or if your patient is using their phone, they really ought to disable notifications prior to starting the appointment. And I have to tell you, I have one guy that I was seeing for, it was actually diagnostic. He was adult ADHD. He was in business by himself. And every couple minutes, our screen would freeze up. And I didn't know what it was. And what it was every time he would get a text or a notification or a LinkedIn, someone wanted him to be their professional contact, his screen would freeze. So if you're working with a patient and one of your screens freezes a lot, you probably want to ask if they have notifications turned off. And if they don't, and you know them well enough, you may want to explore whether this is part of, them being over-connected. And, I mean, this guy, we went on to have a really good conversation about self-care being controlling inputs and, how do you turn off certain things. Oh, you're welcome, Beth. I'll see you later. All right,
So if you're on, I have a question. So if you're, let's say, doing it on your computer, right?
Yep.
And should you have your phone turned off?
That's a really good question. So now, assuming this is someone that's used to it, that's not having problems with connectivity, so you're not using the phone at all. If you're using your computer, make sure you do turn off Zoom or turn off your sound on your phone, just so the pings aren't there. There are occasions where the sound will be better coming through the phone than it would be if they were using the computer. And so someone might stay on the phone with audio, but usually if you have both two episodes of Zoom together, you'll get some really bad feedback. Best practice is really for you to have headphones and the patient to have headphones. Zoom is pretty good with noise cancellation. You may have noticed there's not a lot of it, but it can be a real problem. Here's the other thing that I would mention that's really important. When you start up Zoom, it will always, before you start a meeting, say, which audio do you want to use? And you always want to use the computer audio. Even if it's on your smartphone, you want to use the computer audio. Because if you use the phone audio, there's a chance you're going to have it's not going to be hearing or talking. So the number one thing that happens with patients the first time they do it is they'll be like, and I'll have to type in chat, make sure you go into your audio sessions and set it for computer. Okay, so write that down if you're taking notes. You'll need to in chat say, make sure you go to your audio settings and turn it to computer. And 90% of the time that's handles the problem.
And that comes up on the Zoom thing, you say?
Yes, when you probably didn't notice it, but when you logged in and Zoom started queuing up, it said, what audio would you like to use? And you had a choice between phone or computer audio. Always pick computer audio first, and always encourage your patients to pick computer audio first. Phone audio is for people that are dialing into the meeting. You really want to stick with the computer one.
Mike, I have a question.
Yep.
I'm on my phone for this chat, and I noticed that you've had some questions and answers. How am I going to be able to get those links?
That's a really good. What I can do is, if you send me an email,
okay,
I will. Let's see if I can select all. I can. I am going to put them on a Word document. And, did I do the whole thing? No, I didn't. Okay, so let's see, hold on. see if I
If
got
you're trying to copy out of the chat, it wouldn't let me do that earlier.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me do that either.
all right. So, let's see. Allow attending. Okay, let's see. There should be a way to copy it. I will keep this meeting open until I figure it out, Catherine.
Hey, Mike, there's a spot on mine where it says file right at the bottom of the chat, and it'll let me save it to Google Drive, Dropbox.
Oh, good. Yes, I see it. All right, so I'm going to save it to my computer, and I'm going to save it, let's see, tip notes for Catherine. And if all goes well, this was recorded, so you will be able to download that as well. No, you know what? Actually, Jonathan, that's not going to work, but I'll figure that part out. So I do have to kind of be firm with the time limit. And as I said, I'm going to be doing this, and then the other two groups for the other needs. You're very welcome to spread the word. I'm happy to help out. I hope you're all doing well. I know this is a really stressful time. Sometimes staying focused on the work helps us get through it. And I know you're hearing so many stories day after day after day that are tough. I know that. So if this helps at all, then that's great.
I have a question. So how I got this from somebody else, this exchange, this Zoom. So
Yep.
how would I know what to do if I wanted to get back on next Monday? How would I do that?
The exact same meeting and the exact same password are going to be used every single Monday.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what you see is you'll see a meeting, and that's on your notes. So when you log into Zoom, it'll say join a meeting. So you join, you type in this meeting, and then you type in the password.
Okay, thank you.
Great, I'm glad you're going to come back.
Mike,
Thank
this
you
was
as
super
well.
helpful. Can you add my email to your initial chain to go out? Because I wasn't on that. I got it from someone else, but
I don't think I have your email. Can I put it on you to email me if I type my email in chat?
I'm going to email you right after this. Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound popular, but I'm getting a lot of emails and I'm having a real hard time keeping up with everything.
No, this has been incredible and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, I'll be doing it every week. If you know other people that need it, please let them know. Okay?
Thank you.
All right,
You're
great.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been great.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Michael.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Randy, I
very
know
much.
you came a little late. Did you have
Yeah.
any questions that you wanted to ask before I go?
Well, I'm curious if there's anybody who's ever used this for like feedback sessions. I basically do neuropsych testing,
Yep.
and I want to be able to kind of provide that. And I assume I'm assuming I'll be sharing my screen with the test results and other stuff. But I'm just curious if anybody else has used the share component to provide information, documentation, links to things. How effective that's been, and what any strategies they have about doing that.
So to clarify your question, you're not talking about how do you use it to do assessment as much as how do you use it to share the psychometrics and the
Yeah. I
results?
don't think you can do the kind of assessment that I do, online.
Right.
But the feedback
Yep.
piece is. And a second question is also I've never used it for therapy. I use Zoom frequently for conferencing. But the other question I have, and I apologize, I couldn't get here till when I got here today, is how do people make their new patients comfortable if they haven't used this before? What are there strategies to make people feel like this is a good way to do this, and to kind of invite them when they come into my office? I feel like I'm inviting them to my home in some ways. How do I invite them here? And that's kind of a broad question. I don't know if anybody has any ideas about that.
I mean, I have a select population in that I work a lot with gamers and I work a lot with techie folks, and I'm also 90% online. So for me, it's no longer about option. For me, it's about if you want to see me, this is how you see me. Yeah. And so you can do that in a couple of ways. For yourself, you can start to sort of titrate this into your practice by start saying, as of next week, I'm going to be moving my Friday practice completely online in order to be available for people that are needing to use telehealth because of COVID. And then maybe you'll have to reschedule one patient. Maybe that'll be a challenge. Or as that patient leaves, then you don't fill with another in-person patient. That is one of the easiest ways to do it. In terms of making it more welcome, that can range from the virtual background. I don't know if you were here for my My Little Pony background. If you're working with adolescents, you can change the virtual background and get something really goofy like this. Or you can have something kind of like this if you're, all about mindfulness. I find these a little surreal, so I think you need to be careful with them as a therapist. But other than that, you can also be more mindful of where your camera is set up in your office. So like right now, if your patient's talking with you, Randy, what I'm going to predict is that they're seeing you at the desk you do your paperwork at, and that behind you is the kind of touchy-feely therapy part. And so what you might do is, if you're concerned with it being familiar to them, you might move your camera over to where they would be seeing you normally, if it's possible. That's one way to do it. All right. So I'm sorry I have to go for today, but we will be having this every week, and you're welcome to do that. And you're also welcome to pass along, if you know anyone that is a clinician that's stressed out because of COVID and needing some peer support and clinical kind of case consultation informally. This week we're doing that on, let's see, what day is that? Tuesday. Good God, that's tomorrow. And then we're doing one for educators. So if you know teachers that are struggling as their kind of whole academic life implodes, they're doing that on Thursday.
So that's the same for 4 to 5 tomorrow's the same as your Monday?
No, for what's on Mondays is tips for technical stuff.
Right. No, but I mean the meeting.
No, it will be a different. If you look at the email that you got, each of these 3 has its own number. The password's the same. It's really easy. It's the zip code for Nantucket where I live. So that's really easy.
Are you going to send your email? I haven't seen it on the bottom.
Am I going to say? Oh, sorry. Yes. Let me just send it to everybody. And you are welcome to pass on any of the information. And if people want copies of this recording, I'll be happy to do that too.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Take good care, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. It's very, very great idea. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.